First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I know, depending on your time frame, where you are on the globe, this is pretty early for quite a few of you. But I really appreciate that you're here, and it really makes me glad to know that you recognize the importance already of owning your own trading style and really understanding what it is, what it means for you to understand how to trade. And if you've been here, or if you're here and you understand the importance of that, that means you also understand what it looks like to try to trade the way someone else trades. It just doesn't work that way. And so that was the impetus behind me designing this whole program today, is because I just cannot impress upon people enough the importance of making sure you understand what your preferences are. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, how to find what those are, what kind of practice goes into developing that for yourself. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is Owning Your Own Trading Style. I'm Triffany Hammond. You can find me at triffnfx.com. Here is what most people do. It's really quite simple. You know, there's a lot of reasons people begin to trade in the first place. Many reasons, most reasons, come out of some kind of need to trade. Very few people go, you know, I'm doing okay financially, but I'd kind of like to learn how to do this. Most people are saying, you know, I might be laid off in the next round of people, and I have to learn how to do this. Or we're in debt up to our eyeballs, and I'm going to have to figure out some other way to make money, and I only have so many hours in a day. And this need, this dire urgency to bring in a second income is usually what drives people to trading Forex in the first place. At least that's been my experience with my students. And there seems to be a mindset that it's fairly easy to do, that with a minimal output of energy and effort, you can just learn to trade and make a little bit of money on the side. And, you know, you read all the risk disclaimers and you hear all the things that people say about, oh yeah, you just trade it on paper for a little while and then you go for it. And it's easy to just kind of neglect the big warning signs that say this is risky, this is your money at stake, this is a big deal. And so generally what people do is they just kind of, you know, treat it like a hobby. They'll read a book, maybe come to a few webinars, find a favorite analyst, and then they'll kind of eyeball it for a little while, and then they just start trading it. If they're lucky enough to have someone tell them, no, you have to backtest, you have to load some information, some historical data, and see if this works. Generally speaking, people just kind of eyeball the chart and go, yeah, look, there's a double top and it played out. Yeah, look, there's a double top and it played out. These work, and then they just dive in. And what most people experience as a result of that is, for some reason, there is something to that whole beginner's luck. Maybe it's the whole, you know, lack of fear. I don't know what it is. Generally speaking, the first trade is a win. And the first trade is usually the trade that people were cautious with their money on. And when it wins, people get really excited and they start to risk more. They start to look for more types of that trade, maybe on smaller time frames, to try to take advantage of, try to get more setups. And as you know, if you have done any testing, if you have been experiencing the Forex market for a while, yeah, things are sort of the same from time frame to time frame, but they're not exact. You really do have to understand the behavior as things start to break down into the more volatile, shorter time frames. And then they go, you know what, the system doesn't work. It doesn't work. And somebody they're talking to in some chat room, or somebody new comes on a webinar and they say this is the next best thing, and they jump right back in and they repeat that process over and over and over again. And it's really a dangerous cycle to get yourself into psychologically as well as financially, because what you're going to experience is more than just a financial loss. It's going to be everything that you told yourself was going to make this good for you, that you were capable, that you could do this, that you're smart, that you learn quickly. Maybe you even took a little finance in college. Suddenly, you're not going to think so much of yourself anymore. You're going to have to answer to your spouse, maybe your family members. As you know, if you're in a situation where this was supposed to get you out of debt, some people have actually borrowed money to put into their accounts, and now they're even more in debt. It takes them farther and farther away from the dreams of freedom that brought them to Forex in the first place, and it's a tragedy. So what's really much more important than just saying, I'm going to read a book and figure out how to do this, and that's a great starting point. That's fine. But it has to be just that, a starting point. And that's what we're going to talk about in depth today, what that looks like to create more than just the beginning of this horrible vicious cycle. There have been studies about the way people learn and how long it actually takes before somebody's considered an expert at something. And the number, I'm not sure quite how people got to the number, but they say it takes 10,000 hours before you really truly know something. Now, if you could study Forex, and I mean study, I mean work at it, not just read books and articles. If you could actually practice Forex for 24 hours a day, it would still take you over a year to learn it, to really become proficient, to really become an expert at it. If that's the learning curve, consider how much time you really have been spending. Even if, and I'm not saying that you should spend more time. I'm saying ease up on yourself a little bit about your learning curve. Understand what it really takes to become proficient at something, because you can't really do Forex on the side, quote unquote, until you've done it as a job, until you've really dedicated yourself to it. And it simply is not that easy. And I've seen students go, you know what, I thought this was going to be easy. This is all I was looking for. I don't want to keep trading if it's going to be a full-time job. Fine, great, don't trade. I tell those people, it's good you realize that now, walk away. But there's something about Forex that keeps bringing people back. I've seen it bring out the most competitive side in people that generally are not competitive. And they're like, I'm going to beat this thing. I'm going to beat this thing. That's fine. Just recognize and go into it understanding that it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of focus, and a lot of dedication. This is the kind of thing that really does need to develop. There has to be a learning curve that you allow for yourself. Whatever it is you do for your job today, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, I don't even know, whatever it is, you didn't just become that overnight. It didn't just happen. You didn't just go, you know what, I think I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to be a general contractor. I'm just going to do that. You weren't able to just wake up one day and decide to do that. You had to learn about construction, probably a lot of different sides of the trade. And then you had to learn about business. And then you had to learn about how to market yourself. And there's all of these little nuanced things that had to come over time until you got really good at what you're doing. That's the way it is here. And if you think about where you're at in whatever profession you're in right now, all of those little things that have kind of created a gut instinct in you are things that were developed over time. It's the same with Forex. It's really not different. It has to develop over time. And then you consider all of the things that you did to get to where you are right now in whatever it is you do. Everything that allowed you to get to the point where you were the expert at what you do had to develop. And people who look at you now say, well, yeah, he's a great general contractor. Man, I really trust him. He knows his stuff. That confidence comes from doing it. It comes from, really being in tune and making a conscious, focused effort on what you're doing. Now, here's the great thing about Forex. We can sort of, in a lot of ways, manufacture that experience and kind of crunch it in. We don't actually have to trade real money for the next 10,000 hours, right? We can practice that in a really safe environment by loading historical data on our charts or using a backtesting system, and that's what we're talking about today. Now, I'm not saying you have to ignore everything you've heard from people or read about in your books or any of that. I'm saying what you're going to have to do is really pick something that you've gravitated towards, something that makes sense to you. And you're going to have to practice it. You can practice it without real money. Now, I know that there's the argument out there that says, you don't really learn how to trade until you learn how to trade with real money. And to a large extent, that's true when you're talking about the emotions engaged once your money is in play, right? Is at risk, right? Because that's what we're really talking about, is how to put your money at risk and make it a worthwhile risk. However, it's a lot less risky if you've already developed a high probability system outside of the trading experience. And that's what I'm talking about doing, is pulling that historical data down, grabbing something that you like, and practicing it. Now, what's going to have to come along the way during that practice is a lot of understanding and a lot of patience. And when I put kindness on here, I'm talking about kindness to yourself. Because you're going to grab whatever book you like, whatever author you like the best, whosever webinar you like the best, or whatever, and you're going to try that. And your first attempts at it are going to be you tearing your hair out, even in practice, you tearing your hair out saying, this doesn't work. How does this person trade like this? It doesn't work. And you feel like you're following the exact rules that they've told you to follow. You feel like you're doing it exactly the way that you read it and the way that you understood it. And you're going to be mad at them for writing a piece of malarkey in the first place, and then you're going to wonder, well, this person says they're making money on this. My buddy over here said read this book, make money off of it. Why can't I make money off of it? I'm an idiot. Don't get to that point. Practice kindness with yourself. Practice understanding with yourself that this is just the beginning of your learning process. And if you've been trading for a while, allow yourself to go back to the beginning. You might have some really bad habits to undo. Allow yourself to go back to the beginning, refocus, and be kind to yourself along the way, and then practice it again. And with each practice, with each time that you go through it, if you're focused during your practice, if you don't do it mindlessly just because it's something you have to do, it's on my list for the day, I just have to do it. If you're focused and you're actually engaged in the process of learning it, you'll start to notice things. Little things, and you'll be able to start to incorporate those into your practice and therefore into your trading. So here's what I recommend. Actually, before I move on to that, I'm going to back up. I want to give you a chance to ask some questions, because what I've just talked about here is actually pretty significant, and maybe some of you don't. Maybe you're not feeling like that's significant. Maybe you're feeling like this is just the introduction to what we're talking about next. But if you're actually even engaged in this webinar, you're going to have some questions at this point. Have you backtested? How many of you here have even backtested? I want you to write in, yes, I've backtested, or no, I have no idea what backtesting is. I'm really curious. Hi, Jerry. No, okay, yes. I review history, so that's the eyeballing. I do backtest, yes. Never backtested, yes. No, I have no idea. Okay, good. Very honest. Sometimes, not yet. I have. Demoed, okay. Not quite the same thing, but at least it's practice, right? Not putting your money at risk. Demo account for 4 months. No backtesting. Most brokers will allow you to load historical data. I don't know of, I should say most, because there are a couple that don't. Have real tested with small money. Good. Okay. So we have a really good mix. I'm actually really glad to see some of you here that are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what this backtesting stuff is. And I love the honesty. that you're able to say, well, maybe I haven't. Here's the thing. We have on our plate a lot of things that we want to do in a day, and a lot of things that we have to do. And it's very difficult sometimes to of course it's difficult to prioritize. That kind of goes without saying. But it's difficult sometimes when we institute change in our life and we bring these small things into our routine. Any major change starts with some small thing that has to enter the routine of what you do every single day. Because if it doesn't enter the routine, when things get scary, when things get stressful, you're always going to fall back on the things that you just naturally do every day. So if backtesting if practice isn't just one of the things you do every day, when you get into a stressful situation and you fall back on those things, you're actually not falling back into the things that are going to help you continue to move ahead. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense because that's really important. And that's what we're really talking about here when we're saying, when I'm saying practice, instituting practice into your life and into what you do. Life is all about practice. We don't realize it every day, but we don't realize it all the time, but every day that we go to work, we're practicing our trade. We make decisions. We do our research. We interact with the people around us. We have a lot of different opportunities throughout the day that give us a chance to develop not only what we're doing as a course of our job, but develop who we are as people. And that's my favorite focus of training Forex, is developing people. But when you consider this, when you consider the importance of instituting a small change, adding a little bit of practice to your day, what you're really saying is that you're making a commitment to not only improve your financial self, but you're going to improve your personal self. You're changing your routine. You're changing your safety. What you fall back on is now going to be something that is healthful to you, as well as helpful, right? Because when we feel overwhelmed, when things get difficult, very often the routine that we fall back on is not one that's healthy. It's one that, we just need to zone out, and we just need to maybe play some video games or watch TV or, something that actually takes us further and further away from our goals. And you'd be surprised if you had to log the hours that you spend in that routine. You'd be surprised at how many hours you spend at not moving forward. This is why this is so important. This is why what's coming next really needs to be preempted by a little bit of a pause and discussion. You understand how important that is. What we're talking about is instituting a small change into your life. It doesn't have to be 5 hours a day that you're backtesting, that you're practicing your trade. I'm asking you to enter into your routine, into your habits, something that is going to continue to put one foot in front of the other and one step at a time to move you toward your goals. I don't want you in that cycle where you're hopping from one system to the next because this should be easy and it's not. There might be a few people out there, guys, that this was easy for. First of all, I've never met one. At least not one whose results I saw and who really saw that it worked that quickly for. Second of all, Forex acts really more like a mirror. It's more of a reflection of who you are. It's a brand new start. It's a brand new beginning of a really big challenge. And it's going to bring up for you a lot of the obstacles that you've been facing in life all along. Maybe you just didn't have this kind of frame around it. Maybe it just now looks different. And until you actually recognize that there is a real process involved in developing yourself into a trader, you are not going to be able to recognize what it takes to get there. Does that make sense? But now we have had some comments come in here. Let me just check. Okay, so there was some more feedback from my question. Great. Where do you find the data to load into the software? You can call your broker. Most brokers' platforms will allow you to load historical data. You have to call them. Each broker's different. Can you demo how to backtest? Yes, absolutely. And that's what we're talking about today, and we'll talk more about that in detail here in just a little bit. Okay, so some conversation between you guys. Just play back the history and trade in the history data manual. Yeah, we'll talk about that again here in just a little bit. But that's what we're talking about, is looking at historical data, testing out your trading ideas until you get, until you find a high probability way for you to trade. Jeremy says, I'm that bad. I get to the TV, watch the movies, and it eats away at my time. But I'm trying to control that. That sort of behavior, I think, is one of those things that's not necessarily bad to take time off. You just want it to be a conscious choice, right? It's like if you were trying to eat differently, if you were trying to eat better. It's not necessarily bad to have that cookie. You just want to make sure that it's a choice to have that cookie and not your default setting, right? The idea is tuning into what you're doing in your trading life, which really you're tuning into what you're doing in your life and making conscious, present, and aware choices about what you're doing in your life. So if you need a break, if you need to go veg out, fine. But just understand what you're giving up to do that. And some people feel like they're understanding it and they make that choice anyway. But what they don't recognize is they are kind of on their default setting, that routine that they go into. When they come home, I don't even know. Come home, maybe have dinner with the family. I mean, some people don't even do that, eat in front of the TV, right? And there's this disconnect that happens when we're tired and when we're spent and when we're worn out. And immediately our brain disconnects from whatever it is we just do to survive. And what I'm suggesting to you is that you change that so that at least as a part of what you're doing to survive, incorporate some practice in your Forex, simply so that you can create a habit that makes you move forward day after day in a way that feels effortless. It's not going to at first, right? But once it's your routine. Think about it if you work out. You didn't always work out. You had to institute that as a routine, and at first it really stunk. It really did. But pretty soon you're just stopping by the gym on your way home. You don't even think about it. That's just part of your routine. That's just what you do. So this is what I'm talking about. You want to make it something that's just something that you do. Okay, let's see what we've got. My biggest problem learning Forex is information overload. How do I shorten my learning curve? Oh my gosh, yeah. There's a lot to be said for taking one element of your learning at a time. It's really, really difficult to absorb everything at once. And quite honestly, you can't. You can't. And then it becomes a matter of you can't prioritize what people are saying. I've said it in my own webinars. I've said it to my own students because I do a free watch this webinar twice a week. And I said, look, if they're coming to these webinars day after day and we're looking at charts and I'm saying I have a bias to the long side, suddenly they go, wait a second, I have a bias to the short side. And if this happens day after day after day, I've actually said, you may not want to come to my webinars anymore because you're talking about trading a system that makes sense to you, and listening to others is feeding you doubt and fear. And let me tell you, there's enough doubt and fear out there, and for good reason, right? You don't need to be instituting anymore. Sometimes you have to put some blinders on, Casey, and say, I'm not listening to this anymore. I have to study what my process is. I have to figure out the way that I want to trade, and I have to prioritize the information that's important to me. What you may find is once you've sort of cemented a piece of the information for yourself, you'll move forward and maybe revisit some of those old teachers. And now what they're saying has a different tone because now you're listening to that information with a different frame of reference. You reread of an old favorite book or something and you get little tidbits out of it that you didn't see before. And maybe you've already come to discover those and you go, oh my gosh, he said it. If I could have just learned it when he said it, I wouldn't have had to learn it on my own. Well, at the time, you didn't have ears to hear because you weren't there yet. You didn't have the foundation pieces to understand that. And this is what we're talking about. This is what I'm talking about when I say understanding patience and kindness in your process. Do not beat yourself up. Please stop beating yourself up. I don't care if you've lost account after account. I don't care if you've blown up more money than most people make in a year. I've heard horror stories. I've had students that have just been through. I had a student that lost almost $1 million. She treated her entire account like it was a video game. She treated it like it was her paper account. And she grew it to $1 million, almost $1 million. And because she never took profits and she never benefited from that in any way, and she blew it. And you want to talk about emotional hardship. You want to talk about an absolute personal beating up. This girl was a wreck. And what we have to understand about ourselves, what we have to understand about our process, it is absolutely critical that along the way we forgive ourselves at every turn. Because if we do not have the ability to forgive ourselves our mistakes, we remove the ability to overcome them. What do you do to your psyche when you replay your mistakes over and over and over again in your head? You just keep recreating those mistakes. And you come to a place of self-loathing, and it's counterproductive. It doesn't do anything. A better place to be is, and it's hard to get there, it takes a lot of practice to get there too, but a better place to be is a place that says, well, it was a really painful lesson. It sucked. I hated being there. But I've had that lesson now, and I can put it behind me. I can move on. I remember, was it this last Summer Olympics or the Summer Olympics before that? I don't remember exactly which one, but there was a swimmer that had come. He was the underdog, and he was older than all the other swimmers, or maybe it was a diver. It was a diver. And they asked him, how did you come in here at your age against all these young kids and win so many medals? This is amazing. You did great. And he said, I already know what it's like to lose. The Olympics before that, he had come in and blown up. He said, I already knew what that was like, so I wasn't afraid of it. I knew I could do that and still survive and still swim and still be strong and still be good. So he wasn't afraid of it anymore. That's the place you want to be in your trading. That's the way you want to be in your practice. That's the way you want to be with yourself in life, right? I mean, this is what we're really talking about. We want to just keep moving ourselves forward in the most healthy way possible. So yeah, Casey, be kind to yourself. Okay. Convergence asks, is it really possible for an individual to earn a living from Forex trading? Absolutely, it's possible. I don't think it's possible for everyone. I have to just be that honest. I think some people are so unwilling to change that it's not possible for everyone. Let's see. Yes, it is being recorded, Lee. You should be in good shape. Okay, fantastic. Great discussion. Okay. So here we go. Here's what comes next. And here's what I recommend. When we are talking about backtesting, what we're talking about is taking just one system, just one thought, just one discipline about trading. And you're either going to load historical data through your platform. You can do that for free. It doesn't cost you any money to load historical data and move through candle by candle. What you have to do in order to make this work is move through it as though it were happening live. Because here's the problem when people eyeball their charts. Let's say we were talking about patterns, chart patterns, and you wanted to backtest double tops. Okay. People, if they load historical data at all, will kind of look at it and go, there's a double top and it worked out. There's a double top and it worked out. Well, let me tell you, when you're looking at a full screen, a screen full of candles, it's really super easy to see the double tops. Yeah. And you start to go, boy, that works out every time. That's fantastic. That's so cool. And immediately you start looking for double tops in your charts. It's a very different thing when you go back in time and you're only moving forward one candle at a time. Very different. Which is why it's very different from reading a theory in a book and then just trying to trade it right off the bat, right? Because what happens is you see two peaks. You know, everything's to the right of your chart, and you're going candle by candle, and the first peak forms, get a little valley, then you get a second peak, really close to that resistance level. And you start to go, well, is this a double top, or is it on its way to making a new higher high? Is it trending? Was that last peak just merely a pullback? Well, so you move candle by candle, and then there's a little pause, and the candles look a little more undecided. You go, okay, all right, I think that's a bounce. I think that's starting to make a peak. And you try to take a trade on it, and it was just leveling off before it makes a big run, right? You're trying to take a counter trend trade on it, and it's actually going to the long side. It's okay to experience that in your backtesting because you haven't lost any money, but that's absolutely devastating if you do it live. So what's so critical about doing this is you are going to start training your brain to see setups as they're forming, as opposed to what is so easy in seeing them in retrospect. I mean, if we all had the benefit of hindsight, if we'd had the benefit of foresight in the way that we can look at things hindsight and go, yeah, that's gonna be a double top. Well, we'd all be rich, but it doesn't work like that. So, loading historical data is free. You just move through candle, but you have to be disciplined enough not to peek, right? You have to move it one candle at a time, all the way off the chart as things move to the left, and pretend that things are real. You can use a program. I use Forex Tester. There's a learning curve to the program itself. It really does take a little while to figure it all out. It's not super user-friendly, but once you figure it out, it's a huge time saver, and it actually tracks all the data for you, so it minimizes what you have to track by hand. There are still certain things that I track by hand because I try to stay as present in my backtesting as possible. But you do have a couple of options. The downside of using a program is there's an outlay of cost, right? Forex or FX Tester is I'm trying to remember its regular price. I think it's $150. Because I have my own training site and everything, they offered me, I had a chance to sell it through my site. My price is $99, and I passed it on to my students. I don't take any profit off of that. So if you want it, I can get it for you cheaper. Come to triffx.com. But at any rate, that's neither here nor there. The downside of using a program is that it does cost money, and there is a learning curve. The upside is it saves you a lot of time. If you're loading historical data on your charts, it's free, and because you're moving candle by candle, you actually, I think, in a lot of ways, are actually more engaged in your decision-making process. When you're using the software, it does move you candle by candle. That's fine, but they can create so quickly that for some people, I've seen them just completely disengage. And if you're not engaged in your process of backtesting, you're not learning. You're not having that intrinsic learning experience. All those little things that start to click off ideas and things in your head. So you have to be really conscious of that if you're using the program. So there's pros and cons. I backtested just candle by candle for free using my historical data for years before I used the program. So it's that you can reap benefits. You can have the practice. It just takes longer, a lot longer. All right, what you're going to want to do then? Tiffany, I use FX Tester, Forex Tester. Let's see, what else did I get here? Did I miss any questions? Oh, Dave confirms. Yeah, that is it. Yeah, Forex Tester is $150. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for confirming that. I couldn't remember what the retail price on that was. Jerry's asking when I backtest what period interval do I use. I use I load them by 1 hour at a time. But there's lots of trading testing that I do that actually have the next time frame higher. So I'm watching my overall support resistance on a 4-hour chart. I'm watching the 1 hour for entry. And I still backtest. And what do I use for live trades? I do my analysis on MetaTrader. My broker's GFT, and they have their deal book is actually a really good charting program. It just doesn't have all the bells and whistles that I like, so I use MetaTrader. Okay, but that's just me. Okay, so what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do. You're going to load that information, whether you're using historical data or a program. Doesn't matter which, but you have to load historical data. And I suggest going far back in time. I really do. I suggest starting at the beginning if you can. Simply because as you test and retest, you want to add on more and more information, and that's going to take you forward in the time frame. You don't want to just take, like 2007 and retest that year after year. For starters, you're going to start to memorize the data, which is not going to do you any favors. And also, it's very limiting in terms of conditions, right? You want to get yourself a variety of conditions within your backtesting. So you're going to start with one idea and you're going to practice it. The important thing is while you're practicing it, while you're backtesting and you're logging these trades, at first it's going to be really frustrating because you're spending this time, you're not feeling like you're getting a whole lot out of it. This is something that really does build itself. I should say builds on itself, right? It's something that over time grows and grows and makes you more steady, more steady in your progress over time. So you're going to have wins, you're going to have losses. Right now, you're going to need to stay objective about those wins and losses. You're going to have to, if you start to get subjective about them, you're going to lose any learning opportunity you have within those wins and losses. And again, this is all on paper, right? This is all in the historical data. So your money's not involved yet. Here's your chance to really be objective about your trading and see if this is really working or not. You're going to have new ideas. As you go along, you're going to want to, gosh, it seems like every time I try to hold on for that second profit target, I lose, whatever. So then you're going to change it. And then you're going to go, wow, that one really wants to scream after it leaves these levels or bounces off. The bounce seems to give it more momentum. I'm really going to hold on, and then you're going to change that. Instead of doing that, write your changes down and test them later. Keep your backtesting results confined to your first set of rules, because what you're going to be doing is muddying the waters. You're not going to know which one of your ideas is working when they're all mushed together in this motley of trades, right? Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you about what this backtesting does for you. It's going to be boring. You're going to hate it. It's going to be something that you have to do, and you're going to roll your eyes, and it's going to suck for a while. But as you move closer and closer to real tradable results, you will get excited. You'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to start to run toward it, and you're going to get addicted. And as you get addicted, you're going to start to realize that what you're really getting addicted to is the taste of success. I mean, what you're really doing is you are now taking everything you learned academically, all of the theory that you've worked so hard to push into your brain, and you're now in the context of charts and candles and moving averages and whatever else you have on your charts, you are now making it something that's applicable to you. It's like anything that you've ever tried to learn, whether it was math or English or science or any of it, there's a point in time when it's all so new it feels overwhelming. You just don't get it, and you hate having to think about it. Why do I have to think about it? When am I ever going to really use this in real life? I hate it. All of those things. And then suddenly, some part of it starts to speak to you, starts to speak to who you are. And then you get excited, and then you want to do it all the time because I'm this close. I realize now that I can cut my losses this way. All I need to do is figure out how to capitalize on my gains. Okay, I've realized now that this time of day is really slow for this style of trading, and I'm actually going to just eliminate these trades. And as you come to each one of those little realizations in your testing, you become more and more addicted to the process of the testing. You really do. You get excited about it. And how great is it to have something that's a part of your routine, right, like we're talking, part of your lifestyle, that you, A, enjoy, and B, is actually moving you forward more and more toward financial freedom. It's pretty exciting. But I do, people that expect for it to be exciting right off the bat, no, it's not. All right. Now, before I move on, I'm going to go ahead and check for questions. Let's see. Yes, FX Fair is talking about the use of historical data in MetaTrader, and just moving forward one candle at a time. Yep. It's that simple. It really is. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. What it does have to be is engaging. You have to engage yourself in the process. That's what it has to be. Everything else is just whatever you choose to do with it. Martin wants to know, could I show you what it would look like on the charting package? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see if we have time. Yeah, we'll see if we have time. Yes, Convergence, I will. I'm going more and more into the backtesting how to do it. That's exactly what we're getting to. How far back do you need to go? I recommend going back to the earliest possible point you have in historical data, whether that's through your platform or through Forex Tester. The reason I recommend that is that as you continue to backtest, you're going to want more and more data to pull from. You don't want to just choose one chunk of time and test that one chunk of time over and over again. So I suggest going way back. Look, conditions in Forex change. Conditions in the economy change, right? So why should we limit ourselves to one subset of those conditions? We really do want to go all the way back and make sure that we're looking at a variety of conditions because we want to make sure that our system holds up, right? Great. Thank you, Youngbin. Ross, would it not be better to practice on a demo account which has live data on all time periods? You can. Absolutely, Ross. You can forget all of this stuff. You don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. You can. The benefit of loading the historical data is that you're taking, if you're going to do it through a paper account, you're limited to the number of hours that are presenting themselves in each day. If you backtest, you can scrunch a lot more experience into a smaller amount of time. So rather than wait for an hour for that candle to show up to make your decision, you press a button and you see the next candle and you get to make your decision. And it scrunches much more experience into a lot smaller time frame. Good question. And that's, honestly, that's what a lot of people do. The idea of backtesting is new to a lot of people. It's something that they just don't consider. It doesn't occur to them. And unless you have somebody who says to you, go practice your trading on historical data, why would it occur to you? I mean, Forex conditions seem like, and the dynamic, they change. They're constantly printing candles every single moment. Why, there's my practice. I'll practice on a demo account. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I highly suggest that as a part of your learning process, and we'll get into that too. But, certainly what we need to consider is how much time we can save by moving all of that data down into hits on a space bar, as opposed to, if you're trading a daily chart on a paper account, how are you going to get that many chance to practice your trading? And then people get impatient with it, you know. They don't want to practice for a year or two before they hit their live account, especially if they're looking at something long-term like a 4-8 hour or a 4-hour, 8-hour, or a daily chart. Yeah. Okay, we've got a little conversation between each other. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. What indicators do I use? I'm a support and resistance trader. I'm price action first and foremost. I have two things on my chart, an 800 simple moving average and a default setting MACD, and that's it. Forward testing. Yes, Boyke, we can talk about forward testing. That's really kind of the testing we do on our paper account, so we'll definitely talk about that. Jerry's talking about choosing your trading session. Yeah, absolutely. Good comments. Mika says, but with backtesting, we wouldn't have the news events and the release information because it affects currencies a lot. Yes, you're right. And that is something that I was going to say for later, but we can certainly talk about that now. I do not have a problem with that at all. What we're talking about when I'm talking about backtesting is finding an understanding of price action first. Everything else you're going to do in your trading is just going to add to that understanding of price action. What happens with fundamentals, and aside from your great big moves, aside from your, volatile news announcements or, something that happens that sets off risk alarms and things like that, aside from surprises, economic news is generally forecasted, and the market plays into those forecasts the same way. So if it's expecting it to be beneficial for a currency, it's going to play it the same way as if it expects it to be detrimental to the currency. So it's going to play it in the opposite direction, right? What's important, at least in my mind, first for traders, is to understand the story that's going on in price action. You don't have to know what the news announcement was in price to see that the market was getting enthusiastic about a buy trade, that the market was slowly pushing money into the buy side of the trade. And that's what you want to develop. Now, I'm not saying in your live trading fundamentals won't affect it. It will. I know traders, though, that completely ignore the fundamental calendar. They just don't even pay attention to it because it messes with their analysis and with their trading. Of course, I know traders that are purely fundamental traders as well. They're generally longer-term traders. Because finding that exact entry and exit points is more difficult, being purely fundamental. But what I'm saying is you have to first understand what it means to look at the chart and understand what this bullish move means, what a pause looks like, what a change in sentiment looks like. And that's what you're going to be developing over time when you're looking through your historical data. Does that make sense? It's a great comment, and you're absolutely right, Mika. It absolutely affects currencies. Yeah, Young Bean says, news is a problem, yeah. Okay. Yes, Lucky. Lucky says, honestly, are you making money? Yeah. I made a lot more money in the years before last, but last year I started my training business. I took a lot fewer trades. So, yeah. And, it's a fair question to ask because someone else in another webinar of mine asked me, do you actually trade? Do you trade? Do you really trade? Or are you just teaching it? I do really trade. And it's important to know of your mentors and your teachers and the people in your community, especially if they're trying to say that they know more than you, is do you actually trade this stuff? Because one of my favorite fundamental analysts, she's remarkable, but she doesn't trade, and I have to remember that when I read her analysis, because what she's looking at is big picture stuff as opposed to actionable news. That's important for me, right? It's a good question to ask. Yes, okay. All of these other things I'm getting to, so I'm just not going to talk about them right now. And if I don't get to them for some reason, certainly ask them again. So here's what you want to keep track of in your testing. And this is just a starting point. As you test, you're going to find, yes, Harley, that's exactly who I mean. For the benefit of the recording, Harley asked, you must mean Kathy Lean. Yeah, that's who I mean. I love her. She's fantastic. She's absolutely brilliant. So at any rate, what to keep track of in your testing? Obviously the pair. If you load a historical data and you're keeping track of this on, in a Word document or in a notebook, I always did mine in a notebook simply because it seemed like it was easier for me to write stuff down than it was to, have a whole separate document and everything. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You want to keep track of the pair. It seems kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many of these notebooks you get going, how many of these documents you get started, and it's very easy to goof them up and forget where you were. Date and time of the entry and the exit, the day of the week of the entry and the exit. This is important because at some point you are going to ask yourself, am I willing to hold a trade over the weekend? At some point, when you go back and you look at your results, you're going to want to know what days of the week you're most profitable, what days of the week work best for you, what kind of action in the week plays to the strengths of your system you're developing. Same with the time of the entry, right? Recording the time of the entry, the time of day that you get into and out of a trade is going to really show you a lot about when your trading is most effective. Is it during the Euro session, the New York session, the Asian session, right? All of these are really important things to keep track of. They don't seem like it at first, and at first it's going to just seem like a whole heck of a lot of accounting that you're doing, a lot of data entry here. But at some point, you're going to have to go back into your data. I call it mining your data, going back in there and making sense of it, making use of it so that it becomes something that's important to what you're taking forward in your trading. Your entry price, whether it was buy or sell, and the condition of the trade. Again, seems really obvious, but people forget. They'll just jot down maybe the entry price, but they didn't say whether or not they bought or sold it, which at the time you're taking it, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're going back to mine your data, the more information you have down in your records, the easier it's going to be to make sense of them. And I guarantee you, you're going to go back the first half a dozen times and think, oh, I wish I would have kept track of that. Oh, I wish I would have kept track of that. So, again, even learning how to backtest has its own learning curve. Even knowing what's important to you is going to have a learning curve. Your stop loss and your profit target, make notes of those as well, and whether or not which one got hit when you got out of the trade. If you get out of the trade early, write down when you got out of the trade, the exit price. How long the trade took to complete. That is one that I recommend to everyone simply because it's probably the easiest way for people who have never backtested before. It's probably the easiest way to start the engagement process, really tuning you into these trades you're taking. It's very easy to zone out when you're looking at candle after candle after candle. And pretty soon you don't even know what information is important. You don't even know what it's supposed to look like to make it meaningful. You just take a trade and you get out of a trade, and you just take a trade and get out of a trade. One of the easiest ways to bring you back to your data is to just ask yourself, how long did that trade take to complete? I've had trades I've taken on a 5-minute chart. I don't normally trade the 5-minute chart. There's very few situations where I will. But I have taken them on a 5-minute chart before that have still lasted a day and a half. That's pretty significant on a 5-minute chart. That's really saying something on such a short time frame. And then, of course, even my hourly trades will last weeks sometimes. I mean, those of you who are students of mine, how long did that dollar loonie take to play out? I think a good 2.5, 3 weeks. It did hit the profit target, but it took a long time to get there. It had some wild swings in the middle of that. So that's important to know because as you come back, you're then asking yourself, or you're at least engaging your brain in the process of, I could potentially be holding these trades. If this is the system I'm gravitating toward right now, and my trades are lasting over the weekend, is that something I could handle? Is that something I want to trade? Do I want to be worrying about trades on Saturday? Do I want to be trading at all on a Sunday if that's your family time? These are the things that you need to start asking yourself. And when you come back to, you're going to be glad that you had them. There's a ton of other stuff you can start to keep track of. These are the absolute basics. And if you start here, I think the process won't be so overwhelming. You will come back to it and you will start keeping track of other things. If you're engaged in your process and you're paying attention, you're mining your data, you're going to come across things that you wish you had kept track of. That's fine. Add it into the next round of backtesting. You can absolutely positively do that. But if I were to throw all of those things at you right now, the process would be so overwhelming you wouldn't even want to start trading or backtesting, right? So keep it simple at first. Let's see, Blakey says, is this slide not referring to a trade journal of trades taken? Yeah, this would be the journal that you're keeping while you're trading your historical data. If you're using a program, the program's going to keep track of most of this, right? It's going to keep track of the pair, the date and the time. The day of the week, it doesn't keep track of. It doesn't tell you whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. What else doesn't it keep track of? Obviously, it doesn't keep track of the condition of the trade. If you're looking at breaks versus bounces, you need a note that says this was a bounce, this was a break, right? Because it's not going to know why you took the trade. It's just going to get you into it. And it also doesn't keep track of how long the trade took to complete. Well, it doesn't separate out that data. You can figure it out, but so you have to be able to cover larger stops with longer term trading. Yep, that's very true. Alex is asking, no, I don't. Nope, not for a while now. Is it best to focus on one currency, on a currency pair, and become an expert on it? Oh my gosh. Yes, Lynn, I am so glad you asked that because I didn't think to say it. Absolutely. I have a trader friend, and she just trades the pound yen. That's all she trades. And she's an expert at it. She doesn't need to trade anything else. She's become so good at it and honed in on ways to capitalize on her winners and minimize her losers on that one pair. She doesn't need to trade anything else. There's nothing in the rule book that says you have to trade 8,000 different pairs. What generally happens with people is that they'll have, once they get to a point in the pair that they're backtesting and then paper trading, they get so enthusiastic they start doing the math. Wow, that's only a 3% gain, but that's on just one pair. And there are 92 million pairs I could be trading. I could be doing, if I made it on this, if I made it on that, oh my gosh, and they start looking at all the money that they could be making out there. And they sort of, the greed kind of drives them to trade much more than they're even an expert at. And let me tell you, each pair has its own personality. There are some that are similar to each other. Pound Swiss and the Euro Aussie are very similar in behavior. The Euro Yen and the Pound Yen are very similar in behavior. Probably because the Euro Dollar and the Pound Dollar are very similar. But you have pairs that are similar to one another. But each pair still has its own personality. It still has its own nuance about it. And it's really super important to recognize that you're going to serve yourself best when you really become an expert at doing one thing on one pair first. If you want to expand after that, fine. But make sure you translate that process into a whole other pair before you just, you go, oh, this system works. And then suddenly you're trying to apply it to everything. And they'll just behave just enough differently that they can really goof with your system. I have much deeper stops on a pound yen than I have on a pound dollar. I give it much more room to swing. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's really important. Hold on a second. I need to. Okay. Let's see. What else did I miss here? Boy, there's a lot of comments. What currency do you trade? I actually seem to have a preference for the crosses than I have for the majors. But I trade a few different pairs. I watch more than I trade. It's really rare that I'll take like a dollar Swiss, but I want to watch it because I trade the pound Swiss. And since that's half of the pound Swiss, I'll watch it. Dudley says, I only trade the euro yen. I find this is best as you can focus on better than chasing other trades for pairs and I'm not familiar with. Yeah, absolutely. That and two, if we're talking about things that become overwhelming in your trading, certainly the pressure to trade a zillion pairs all at once. How am I going to manage my trade on this and that? And it's too much. You can certainly incorporate a pair at a time, and make the process much more easy on yourself rather than just completely bombarding yourself. But I think a lot of that really does come from the sense of urgency that bring people to Forex in the first place. It's really rare. The person that just goes, you know what? I'm going to learn an entirely new skill set. I mean, this is like getting a whole new degree, right? And it's a rare person that approaches it that way when they first start out. People who stick with it begin to recognize that over time. But most people come to it out of some dire circumstance, and it's that sense of urgency that makes them force their learning process and then, try to manage too many trades on too many pairs all at once. Do you know anybody in person who's trading Forex for a living just trading? Yes. Who don't teach it as well? Yes. Yes, I do. What pairs would you recommend? I always recommend for absolute beginners the pound dollar. But that's not necessarily my favorite pair. Okay, great. All right, I think I'm all caught up in questions. So here's what I recommend for step 2. And actually we're getting down to, let's see, I've got half an hour left. Yeah, I think we can get through this. So once you've gone through the process of backtesting your system, making a change, backtesting it again, making another change, backtesting it again, why don't we want to make a bunch of changes at once? Because then you don't know what change worked and which one didn't. Because you muddy your results. It becomes much more difficult to mine your data. Once you do that, once you feel like you have something that you're ready to trade live, I want you to go back and I want you to retest all of the data you have available to you. Now, if you're testing on a 1-minute chart, testing 6 years worth of data or whatever you have is not really that. I mean, that's not really feasible. But make sure that, well, it is feasible, but it's going to take you a really long time. Make sure that what you've done in the data that you've grabbed, if you're trading super short-term stuff, make sure that you've grabbed different cycles of the season. So a consolidating area, a trending area, a change in sentiment. You want to make sure that if you're doing something as short as a 1-minute or a 5-minute type trading system, make sure that you're testing all the possible conditions you can possibly find within that. But anybody who's trading an hour or more, time frame, I think it makes total sense to me to trade at least 3 years worth of data. And if it's your daily system, you better be trading it all because dailies just don't give as many trade opportunities. But you're going to take your tried and true system and you're going to go back and you're going to retest your data. Only this time, you're only going to test during the hours that you're available to trade. So when we're loading data on our charts, even in a program or one candle at a time, we're not paying attention to if it's in the middle of the night. We're just trying to see if the system works, right? You might be surprised to find that your system's triggering while you're sleeping. If that's the case, you're going to have to make some changes, right? You're going to have to find a way to use a pending order. You're going to have to figure something else out. You might find that it triggers while you're at work. Well, if you have some flexibility with your lunch hour, maybe that's going to be okay, but you don't want to start stealing from your work in order to trade. And it is stealing. It's kind of like a time stealing, right? If you're only, checking your charts once every 4 hours, that's going to be totally different from trying to check it every 15 minutes. And then I recommend keeping a journal of each trade and pretending like it's a live condition, not just for the data, but for how you're feeling, right? I took the trade because technically it closed above this level, but I really didn't like the long wick on it. Possibly has bearish sentiment instead of bullish. Those are going to be things you're going to be feeling in real time. So those are things that you can start addressing now in a safe environment outside of, the possibility of losing your money. These are really important elements to learning how to carry everything forward. Kelly, hi Kelly. Holy cow, it's early for you, girl. Kelly's in Alaska. The shorter term trades seem much tougher to backtest. Yes. Kelly trades the 1 minute chart, so she understands, and it really is. It really is tough. Jerry's asking, during actual trading, do you use alerts? I used to. I really had to do it when I was using a 2 position on, take half off type of trading. That I started because the trades I was taking seemed to be triggering. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but I don't use that anymore. But I had to use them because if the half off came in the middle of the night, I had to get up and handle them. Don't do that to yourself, folks. Let me just tell you from experience, as a mom and a teacher and all of these other things that I do for it. I can't go without my sleep. Don't do that to yourself. Don't make yourself sick just to trade. There are ways to trade around it, and I did have to develop that for myself, but I don't do that anymore. It's tempting at first because you don't want to miss trade opportunities, right? It's really tempting, and you might even do it anyway for a while, but pretty soon you'll relax. You'll relax into your trading. You'll go, I don't have to take every single entry. There's another opportunity right around the corner. And generally speaking, the ones that you force, the ones that you are, I have to take this trade when it triggers, end up being the losers anyway. So you learn to just kind of ease into your trading more and more. Let's see. Right, exactly. Neil says that's a good point. I guess you do have to be careful with the results backtesting gives you. For example, if you have 80% success in backtesting of a strategy, it does not mean you'll be able to repeat 80% success in a live environment. Right, that's exactly right. Lynn, you asked a question that almost everybody asks, and it's one of the most difficult to answer. What is the best session usually to trade, and what time do people trade at? It depends on the system you're trading. Honestly, it really does. It depends on what you're trading. Very short-term traders generally like the Euro to New York overlap. It depends. It really does. In fact, I had a student, I like to tell this story because I think it's really funny. He developed this really great system. He lived in Australia. He developed this really great system for himself and was surprised to find out that the trades that triggered for him while he was awake he had more losers than winners just in that time frame. There were more winners during other time frames, but he wasn't willing to get up in the middle of the night. He wasn't willing to try to live a 24-hour day, right? So what he did is he just reversed it. If his analysis told him to go long while he was awake, he went short. He totally turned it upside down to go the other way. So let's see, most of my planned trades seem to open when I'm sleeping or at work. How do you advise people with day jobs to succeed in trading higher time frames, limit orders, etc.? I miss my triggers all the time because I'm sleeping. And I get up early, and I still miss them. I just wait for the bounce. It's not that big a deal. If it closes above my level while I'm sleeping, I wait for it to come back and give me a bounce, and then I'll take it off the bounce. If I do catch the break, I'll take the break and the bounce. But honestly, you will find a way. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the whole idea. that we were talked about in the beginning is that you have to give yourself time to develop into these things, to ease yourself into your trading. You will make mistakes. That has to be okay. You have to know that right now, that has to be okay. I'm absolutely convinced that the reason why kids learn so much in their first 3 years is that's the only 3 years they give themselves to make mistakes without hating themselves. Imagine if we did that for ourselves. Think about that. Kids don't beat themselves up if they fall their first time trying to walk or their 10th time trying to walk. They don't tell themselves they're rotten people for that, or trying to read, or trying to feed themselves, or there's no concept in their head that says if I fail I'm a bad person. But for adults, we do have that. We don't give ourselves the permission to fail that we need in order to succeed. That's so fundamentally important to this process. You have to be willing to say, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to see if it works. If it doesn't, I'm going to try something else. As opposed to, I'm going to try this and it has to work. And if it doesn't, I'm an absolute failure. It can't be that way for yourself. It absolutely cannot be that way. When you get to the point when you are, you feel like you've backtested well, you've backtested during the hours that you're awake, you've made the adjustments you need to make. This is called forward testing or paper trading. This is moving forward in the data, right? Live time, real time, but you're still in a testing situation, so your emotions aren't involved yet. They're a little more involved, but your money's not at risk, so it is different. And I say paper trade your system for at least 1 month. If you have to make a change, and I'm saying at least. I recommend you do it for longer than that, but people don't listen to that, so at least 1 month. If you have to make a little bit of a change, make that change and then paper trade again for at least 1 month. I guarantee you, those of you, the people that are in this session right now that have been trying to trade for years and years and years, wish they would have listened to the advice, if they were ever given any, that said, learn for a year first. At the time, I don't have a year. I want to learn it right now. I have to learn it right now. I'm smarter than the average Joe, and I can beat that learning curve, and all of these things. And they're looking back, and they're wishing they would have given themselves time to learn it as safely as possible. Throw that green-eyed monster right out of the room and concentrate on your process and allow your process to take as long as it needs to take. Do not force it. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. And let yourself learn the way that you want to trade. If you simply cannot trade your system, start all over again and let that be okay. Don't beat yourself up for it, please. I had some more comments come in here. Let's see. What time frame do I prefer to trade? The 1 hour chart, that's my favorite. Is it possible to automate my trading strategy and filter overnight to not take trades? Of course. Of course. It's all possible. You're going to have to play with it, right? Maybe know a programmer or just take it off at night, or I don't know. Fuji says, I prefer the overlap session. Great. Albert says, where can I get a good format for a journal? I played with my format for the longest time, and I still end up going right back to the first thing that I ever started with was just a simple Word document. It has the daily, the 4 hour, the 1 hour analysis, and at the bottom it has a place for me to write the stuff about my trades that I want. And actually, the stuff that I do for my journaling now has become a separate document, but it is really simple. It's a screenshot with my comments at the bottom. A screenshot when I get in, a screenshot if I get fearful, which does happen, and a screenshot when I close the trade. So it's simple, simple, simple. Do you use profit target 1 and profit target 2 principle on your trades? Sometimes, depending on the trade. Yeah, I'll have like a long-term profit target that I want to get to, but that in between there, I'm saying, okay, I'm willing to take profit at this part, wait for it to consolidate, get in again. I do kind of mentally keep this, well, not even, I write it down too, but I like to keep the major support and resistance levels in mind, in addition to these, get in, get your profits, get out type of profit targets. There's people are sharing their ideas about what they think good scalping sessions look like. Great, wonderful, excellent. Okay, great, wonderful. All right, and step 4. This is another part that I recommend that people do not like, and I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. Start your account with 1 to 5% of all of your trading capital. Leave whatever else you're willing to trade in the bank in a savings account somewhere away from your trading account. 1 out of 50 of you will listen to this, because what happens is when you have back tested and you find a system that you like that's working, and then you paper traded, and which is also forward testing, and it's working live time, people get so excited that they throw all of their money into the account all at once. But what has been forgotten is that once your money is on the line, your emotions come into play like they have never come into play before. Those emotions by themselves, that simple ingredient, that uncontrollable ingredient, can absolutely destroy your trading system. And you will not know if that's going to happen to you or not until you have your money on the line. Do you understand it? Please tell me that you understand that. Maurice says, yeah, it will destroy your system. It will. I want you to get that, because what's going to happen when you start to get really excited, you're going to see dollar signs everywhere. You're going to just want to go out there and double your account and make great strides in your trading and win all this money, and it's going to be fantastic. And as soon as you put that first trade on, that even though, it follows your system, it's only so many pips stop loss, it now has a dollar sign attached to it. This is potentially $1,000 hit to your account maybe to take this trade, right? No. That's scary. That's a big dollar amount. And you're going to get fearful, and you're going to start goofing around with the system that you worked so hard to build. Do not do that. What you can do, and you can see the numbers on the slide. I don't need to read every word on the slide. What you can do is start with a small amount. Let those emotions come into play. See if it's something that you can even trade. Let me tell you what I did. I got really excited about stacking about 3 years ago. Well, no, probably about 2 years ago. I had been testing it for about 6 months, and in my testing, I was able to be really aggressive. I'm generally a risk taker, just by personality. So it made sense to me that I could become really aggressive in my stacking. So in my testing, it was really successful, and in my live trading, it was really successful. I'm sorry, in my paper trading, it was really successful. And then I got to my live trading, and every single time I went to put on a second, an additional trade, I felt greedy. I felt like I was asking more of this trade than was right for me to ask. Now, what I'm really talking about are kind of these internal mental, I call them internal contracts. What I'm really talking about was my own belief system about money in general, right? If I'm asking for more money in life, doesn't that mean I'm being greedy? That wasn't something that I had really considered up to that point. I'd been consistent with my profits. I'd grown my account. I had learned how to take money out of the account and use that money. I had gotten to this point in my trading where I was really feeling like, well, this is my job. I've worked for this. This is okay. I can use this money. My relationship with money at the time said if I earned it, I could use it. But yet these secondary and tertiary positions, they felt greedy to me. And as soon as they felt greedy, I became emotional about the money that was involved. and I couldn't manage the trade well. I had to go back to the drawing board. And I actually had to go so far back, that's when I changed it to my 2 positions on, 1 position off, believe it or not, because that's a way to trade that makes me feel not greedy. I mean, like I played this whole mind game with myself once I'd started to do that. I'm actually very good at stacking now. It's something I've had to grow into. But my point is until I traded it live, and whatever works on paper, until you trade it live, you don't know how you're going to emotionally react. So don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to fail with big consequences. Allow yourself the opportunity to fail, but keep the consequences really small. And then if you're able to trade that way and it's working for you, you can slowly start to add back into the account. Now, the reason why the slow process is so important, even though, I try to risk 1% to 2% on the trade overall. My first entry point is actually usually 0.5% or less on my first little tester trade in position into the trade. That's what I do. I don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what you're going to do, but you're going to find out. So, but regardless, what happens if you go throw a bunch of money into that account is that even though the percentage that you have at risk stays the same, even if you're going to stick to your system, the amount of money you have at risk is different. So if you jump from having $10 at risk to having $100 at risk or $1,000 at risk, again, emotionally you're going to experience something that can be really detrimental to your actual trading of your system. So allow yourself to just slowly put money back into that account so that at some point you have your full trading capital in there. But you're doing it in a way that doesn't wreak emotional havoc on your trading, right? Ermelinda says, I understand, but I find when it's a small amount, I become less cautious. Oh, that's funny. And when it's more risky, that's funny. Or less cautious and more risky. Okay, I get what you're saying. Well, then understanding that about yourself, yeah, because it's a trivial amount, you go, oh, it's only $10. Well, the important thing to recognize is if you can understand that about yourself, that when you're dealing with a small amount of money, an amount of money that's not important to you, what does that mean for your trading? If you look at that and you say, well, when I feel like it's not a large amount of money, I'm able to take the risks I've calculated for myself, then you need to understand that about yourself. Whatever amount you put back into your account, it has to still feel like it's a small enough amount of money that you can institute your system. Right? Now, if having a small amount of money makes you not institute your system in the fact that you're willing to break your own rules, well, then you have to readdress, from a different perspective. But there's a lot, it's an amazing thing that happens to people when with their trading, suddenly they don't care about the results, they win over and over and over again. That fear that comes into play is what destroys their profits. It was what destroys their ability to earn money. When they go in there and they just go, you know what? I don't even care. It's only $100. That's the trade that goes their way. But if they go, wow, that trade really worked well, I'm going to double my risk this time. Now they're fearful. Then they do stupid stuff with the trades. So, okay. And that really does bring us within 5 minutes of our session here. I always end with the slide when I do slided presentations, be good to you. I always end my webinars with a be good to you. I say it all the time to people, and it seems like something that can just really simply be passed over. But as I've said through this entire presentation, understanding patience and kindness with yourself is crucially important. It's absolutely the cornerstone of anything you're going to do in order to learn and improve yourself and your financial situation. If you find yourself trying to learn Forex and you are constantly beating yourself up, you need to make changes to the way that you're learning, or you need to leave Forex. And it always breaks my heart to make the recommendation to somebody to leave Forex because I love it so much. But you need to be good to yourself through every process that you have in life. It's not a selfish thing to take care of your own emotions, to take care of your own finances, to take care of the things that are important to you in your life, your family, your friends. All of those things are going to keep you strong. They're going to keep you energized. They're going to keep you present in your process. They're going to keep you wanting to come back, wanting to continue the improvement process. And if you can keep the focus on what is good for you, then the decisions it takes to institute a good trading system become easier because you're going to know what feels good. Like I said about, when I first started trying to stack, when it felt greedy to me, I didn't feel like I was being good to myself. That wasn't a good way for me to trade then. My internal contract with myself and with myself about money in particular, I had to pay attention to that. And it wasn't until I nursed that, until I took care of that part, that I was able to move forward. So please, 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 be good to yourself. Take good care of yourself. Take care of your money. Take care of the stuff that matters for your survival, right? Don't put it at risk. Don't be crazy with it. And when you can show yourself that you're responsible with the very basics in your life, you're going to learn to be responsible with everything that comes after that. And in this context, we're talking about system development. If you're in a situation right now, folks, where you're slowly losing money, or worse, quickly losing money, stop trading, please. You're not being good to yourself. That doesn't mean stop trading forever. It means stop trading with your real money, go back to the drawing board, and give yourself a chance to learn this and learn it well. And that's the whole message behind today's webinar. Good. I'm so glad that this is helpful for you. I want to thank you guys all for being here. It means so much to me that you're here. I generally present my support resistance style trading on Tuesdays. Of course, FX Street. It's all free. Please come. My watch list is available to you if you come and join the Traders blog. You can get there from the homepage at www.triffx.com. If you do that, you'll have access to the Forex Tester program at the discounted price that I talked about. I hope you'll come see me again. I really do. Thank you for having me. Adina, thank you for doing the recording. Maud, thank you for having me here to allow me this option. Session 2 will be starting in a half an hour. I'll be back. I'm going to go even more in depth about what good systems look like, what good backtesting looks like, what great backtesting looks like. I hope you can join me for that. If not, be good to yourself, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.